Hey everyone, this is Mark Schillinger. I'm the founder of the nonprofit Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. The YMUW Young Men's Ultimate Weekend is a wilderness rite of passage adventure camp for young men ages 13 to 20. And what do I even mean by a rite of passage young men's adventure camp? A couple of things briefly. Number one, it's a chance for young men to get away from the distractions of their digital devices and their parents and get out into the woods and start to learn how to think for themselves. Our highly trained mentors know how to challenge them. And when we talk about challenge, and that'll probably come up in our call today with these gentlemen, when I say challenging young men or your sons, I'm not talking about like agitating them. I'm talking about arousing their innate male biological wisdom to know how to take better care of themselves. So the YMUW is all about letting the young men express themselves freely, learn more about who they are, where they're strong, where they're weak, and where they're going to need to pick their game up if they're going to be able to handle the challenges of the young adult world. If you want to know more about our work, you can email us at info@ymuw.org. So let's begin. I want to introduce you to three gentlemen who not only have been super important in their roles as board presidents over the last many years, but they're my closest friends, and they have stood by me for all these years, keeping YMUW going, because we could take up this whole conversation, interview, just talking about how hard it is to run a board when you have dozens of dudes who have their own ideas about how it should all go down. So these three men here have not only kept me together, they've kept YMUW together. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each one of you guys to, briefly introduce yourselves. And the way that you can do that is, certainly tell us your name, if you're married, if you have children, and your job, just as a quick thing. And then basically and briefly, how did you even get involved with YMUW? And then I'll jump in with some things we can talk about. So Richie, you want to talk first?
Sure. I'm Richard Platt. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Mill Valley, California. I am married to my lovely wife, Lorraine, and together she's also a marriage and family therapist, and we specialize in helping teenage and young adult and adults, but mainly focused on teenagers, helping them and their parents get through the perfect storm of Marin County and modern American life. And back in 2003, I was working for an adolescent treatment program here in Marin, and I was looking around for a program that could help my young men. And so the fellow who was running that and I brought 6 or 7 of our young men to this thing called the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, and they adopted me immediately as a mentor because of my experience. And I went there and did what we call running with the bulls. And so it was just amazing experience. And I thought, wow, I've got to get involved in this organization. So I started jumping in and ended up being the ringmaster, which is the guy who's responsible for initiating the young men, the guy who's at the center of the circle, for 3 years. I think I was president of the board a couple years, and attended probably, 7 or 9 Young Men's Ultimate Weekends, something like that. And since then, I've sent dozens and dozens of young men to it, and families and parents. And about 10 years ago, Mark and I started a men's team for fathers and for men who wanted to increase their game and also help them in raising their children and their families. These 2 other guys are here, and they've been there pretty much since the beginning for the past 10 years. And also about 15 years ago, Mark and I started a young men's mentoring team in San Rafael, and then we expanded that team to Mill Valley, ran that for many, many years. So I think I'll turn it over. That's my intro, but I just have a great passion for helping parents and young men figure out what I never got taught growing up, and learn and have had to study along the way and pick it up by working with such great guys as Mark. True.
Cool. So Dave, I'm going to ask you and Brent to go first, Dave, and then you, Brent. But I just want to tell the people who are watching is that the way that I met Dave and Brent, and they've become such important men in my life, is through Richard, because Richard has a very engaging way of convincing people exactly what they need to do to have a happy and healthy and holier life. And it worked for these two guys because we've been together ever since. So, Dave, why don't you go ahead and tell us your name and a little bit about family and how you got involved with YMUW.
Sure thing. Thanks, Mark. I'm Dave Bohegan. I am married to a wonderful, lovely, and talented bride, Pavana. We've been married for over 30 years. We have 3 children ranging in age from 28 to 38. And my day job, if you will, is involved with commercial real estate. We live up in Nevada City, California, in Gold Country. It's beautiful up here. We've been here for about 10 years and absolutely love it. I should say, we became involved with the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend about 15 years ago. At that time, our son Zach, was about 13 years old, and he's always been a sweet kid. However, at that time, he was starting to head down a path that I wasn't very comfortable with. So we looked around for a program that might challenge him and give him the tools to negotiate the world today, which is certainly not easy. And through a very serendipitous and sort of circuitous route, we hooked up with Mark and Richard and the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. So Zach did his first weekend, again, about 15 years ago, and did a couple of more weekends as a participant, and then actually became a volunteer, which is one of the policies we have. After young men do at least 2 weekends, then they can get on the volunteer staff. And he has been involved with the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend heavily since that time. He's probably served on, I'm going to say, 10 weekends as a volunteer. And it has just been a wonderful addition to his life. It definitely gave him, not only him, but him and my wife and I, the tools to do what I'd like to think is a good job in parenting him. So you'll hear a little bit more about that from me as we go down the road here. Thank you.
Yeah. How about for you, Brent?
I'm Brent Dorschkind. The questions are eluding me right now, but I'll say this. Go ahead, Doc.
Okay. I was just gonna say, just name, job, marriage, children, and then a little bit about how you heard about us.
Yeah. So what really struck me was I realized that I was married to a beautiful, powerful, intelligent. She's a great mom, and we're no longer married, but we're happily divorced. I'd say we're a good divorced family. And the engagement that I have with YMUW started, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was an immediate, as Richard was commenting, it was an immediate connection for me. That the work was just immediately powerful. And Michelle and I, my ex-wife, have a son who's now 12, but at the time he was, 5 or 6. And I immediately saw that this was just a necessary program in the world, and service, really. The service really speaks to me, and somehow it's a contribution to the world, and most selfishly to my son. So I don't know that I have much more to say regarding my involvement. I've been I don't know, however many weekends since about 2014, and whatever I can do for the organization, I want to do, because I want to see it succeed. Now more than ever, I think now more than ever, a program that lets young men know that there is nothing wrong with them. They don't need to be fixed. And here's how to channel the surging biological energies that I think a lot of people are afraid of, because we've diverged from a path that really respects and honors just the innate intelligence that young men have. And it's just a needed thing. So I'm glad to be here, and I'll shut up now. And I just want to footnote for anybody who's watching, why is he calling him Doc? Because I've always known Mark Schillinger as Doc from the moment I met him and fell in love with him, and like recognized that this is a guy that I want to hang out with, just like Richard and just like Bo. He's been Doc, so don't be confused. I mean Mark when I say Doc.
I'm Bo.
I'm Doc.
Thank you, Dave.
We need a couple more dwarves. We need Sleepy, Dopey, and we're all good. We're good to go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Well, I want to certainly let our viewers know that all three of these men, as I said earlier, have been board presidents, and they've also held other jobs at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. Like Richard said, he's been a ringmaster. The ringmaster is the one man who really does the initiation of the young men. Dave, or Bo, nickname from Bohegan, his last name, Bo, has been the production team manager, which means he's in charge of all the volunteers being in the right place at the right time, getting all the supplies wherever they need to be. It's quite an intense job. And Brent has been a mentor many times, which means he's working with other adult men to lead the young men through their initiation. So what I'm getting at is that these guys have had serious, eye-opening, straight-up relationships with lots of dudes. Some wonderful, some horrible, some everything in between, right? So what I'm going to ask you to just comment on, especially now, because the world is in such a tough place with men. You know, there's been so many horrible things about men being bad to women. Obviously, the wacky leadership that many men, show in politics and economics and all that. And there's a great side to men also. And we have been blessed, the four of us on this call, to have been around and still are around hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of awesome dudes. And so what I'd like you guys to comment about is, because you've been leaders of men, what do you notice about the good things about the men? What are the joys of leading men? What are the benefits of drawing out the best of men? What can you say about good things about dudes, because you've had up close and personal experiences with them? And this is really more of a conversation. So, Bo, I'm going to ask you in a moment to just start the conversation about all your experiences with men. And I want to highlight the good things, but certainly, fellas, jump in. I want to make this more conversational. But I'd like to start with you, Bo, because you've done so many things at the weekend. You've had your son go through the weekend. You just know a lot about being around the dudes. So I'd love for you to begin. Like, name some positive things that you've observed in men.
Sure, thanks, Doc. So one of the main things that I've noticed throughout all of these years, 15 years being at these weekends and working with hundreds and hundreds of men, is that, first of all, men love to feel useful. It puts them in a good place, and that's from personal experience as well. And at a typical weekend, there's maybe 75 young men, and there's at least an equal number of adult volunteers. And the thing as a production team manager that has always struck me is the men that I was leading just have a relentless, never say die attitude. No problems, nothing that can't be accomplished. And when these men get together and bond as a team, the sky's the limit in terms of the programming, all of the logistical stuff, showing the young men the example of how to slip into a good groove, if you will, and giving them the tools to be happy and successful in their lives. It just, it's mind blowing. It's never failed to actually to astonish me. So that's the really the main thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. And because we've been around so many men who, like you say, they love to be useful, I really would like the women who are watching this show to really hear that. We could spend all this show talking about relationships between men and women, and my work with families, as a parent coach and a youth mentor, with Richard's work, as a family therapist. We often will talk about how we see that underlying a lot of the issues in parenting is just that the men and women don't get along great. And so one thing I'm hearing asking the women to really hear is that men want to do good. That's what I'm hearing you both say. They really want to, they want to beat their chest. They want to be heroes. They want to do good shit for real. And so I think for not just the women, but for all people in the world, when you're dealing with men, if you know how to draw out of them that desire to go get it, they'll probably do it. So I appreciate you bringing that. How about for you, Richard? What would you say, some of the high points about you've been, working with so many men over the years too. What do you see? What do you say is favorable about dudes?
Well, what I would say is that I call us the sensitive sex. And in fact, I say that we're so sensitive that we guard up and we shelter up, and we look insensitive, or we can. And that's really just a defense often to hiding a deeper sensitivity under that. And so a lot of what I see on the dysfunctional side of men is this defense, narcissistic defenses. And so, what's wonderful about the guys that come to YMUW and come to the men's team is that they are willing to open that up and look at that sensitivity and become more transparent. We call it taking the mask off, and in doing so, and helping young men do that as well. I think the biggest success is that the men come together and work as a team. And I remember, when I was the ringmaster or a mentor or even the firekeeper, these are the different roles I've had at the weekend. There was a sense that everybody was doing their job. And so therefore I could focus on my job. And there was a lot of support and camaraderie. It was a real team effort. And I think that is really attractive to the young men. I don't think they get that experience really anywhere else unless they're on a highly functional sports team somehow and a great coach. But to see a group of 60 or 70 men working as one with a no problem attitude, as Bo said, and holding the young men in high regard as equals, but holding high standards and not letting the young men or themselves, if a man shows up late, he'll drop down and do push-ups. We don't just hold that for the young men, but this ability to be vulnerable while being strong, it's something that's not, we don't see a lot in our culture. And I think that's something that we really work hard to have the young men experience, that strength and vulnerability can coexist.
Beautiful. Yeah, in our teachings, the four of us are very familiar with this term, both and. So I appreciate what you're saying, Richard, about the vulnerability, and of course, I like to use the word invincibility, both at the same time. Men love to boast and go get it done, and they're also sensitive and delicate creatures the way women are and children and seniors are. And so in our work, we're always preaching to young men and adult men, it's both true. We can be invincible and go get it, and we can be sensitive and be raw and open. The key thing that I would say that I've learned as a leader, certainly at YMUW, is that you got to make it safe for those dudes to feel safe to be vulnerable. And I think that's where we shine. And so, Brent, I see you kind of agreeing with that, and you've certainly been in front of men and being a board president through a really turbulent time a few years ago. What are the positives, though? What are the things that you've seen? You've been literally in the trenches with young men and other mentors. What do you see?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I think when Bo was speaking, I actually getting goosebumps, and for me that means true. That's my feeling, my visceral feeling of truth. And there's something about, to Richard's point, it's like this buy-in. Like we show up, and this is work that we want to do. It's useful, it's purposeful, we're committed to it. All the men who show up, whether they're just just average Joes on the street, or whether they're C-level executives of Silicon Valley companies, or whether they're from another country like Canada. I mean, wherever they're coming from, they all show up and we all coalesce and form this pack. It's like running with somebody said running with the bulls. I think of it like running with wolves and dogs. So one of those canine things, and we're just a pack, and we're all on point, and each wolf or dog is doing its due diligence to the best. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a rare thing. I've worked with a lot of companies professionally over time. I'm a content manager. I work in marketing, basically. And so I've got a chance to see a bunch of different organizations, the way people come together and work together. There's nothing like the YMUW in terms of how men work together and how they bring young men in to both witness and engage with them. There's a vulnerability and a safety, but it's predicated on something that's much bigger, I believe. From my experience, it's much bigger than me. This is just something that I must do because it just calls to me in a way that it's almost ineffable. I can't put words on it precisely. So in leading and working with men in this work, in the rites of passage, it's transcended. It makes everything else in my life worthwhile.
Yeah, so many times, just so you viewers know, at the end of a Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, we go from Friday at 12 noon till Sunday about 4. And if there's any sleep at all, it's maybe an hour or two each night. So the durability, the intensity of the mentors is critical, and the volunteers. And I want to say something about that. I think that might be good advice for parents. So I'm going to ask you guys to comment on this. I think one of the secrets of YMUW is that when those young men show up, as Richard has often said, they're knuckle dragging. They're like, F you, I don't want to be here. My parents made me. When is shit going to be over? All that stuff. I think what makes it work is that they observe a primal thing going on, a tribal thing, where if the men are like a pack, they're not penetratable. You can't separate them. And I think it's a lot like parenting. If the parents are divided, that young man will sniff that so hard and go for whatever he wants. And what Brent is alluding to is that when the men show up, because they're highly trained, they don't show up that day for their first training. They've been trained for weeks and months before. But when they show up and the young men are watching these men model a no problem attitude, I think this is the main feature, that young men see adult men getting shit done with no problem. I think that's one of the greatest values we have. And Richard, I'd love for you to comment on this as a family therapist. I know I see this in my work too, hinted at it before, that when the parents are not together, that's really detrimental for the children. I'm not saying with a judgment, like Brent, I'm divorced. And in fact, everybody on this call, I think, has been divorced once. So we've been through it, and we know the dangers of it, and the dangers to the children, not so much the divorce, but just being married and divorced when you're not sharing the same values and not teaching the right things. That's a real detriment to the family. So I'd love to hear your comments about that, Richard. Certainly for you, Bo, because you've been through it and you know what it's like to, parent children when the adults are together and not together. I'd love to hear you guys how that experience at YMUW, where the men are inseparable, how that translates when parents are separable, and how the young men would take advantage of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in a family that was divorced, and my parents weren't aligned. My dad was basically absent, and so I've lived it, and I've watched so many families, and so I'm just gonna, of course, agree with that. But the thing that comes up for me is that I work with a lot of parents very closely with one parent while the other parent is completely AWOL, and so what I would say is that what's most important is that if that's the case, that you stop that if you're the solid parent, you stop trying to change or fix the parent who's AWOL, and you just focus right on your child and your relationship. And Mark has taught me something called V2B2. that you get your virtues, your values, your beliefs, and your behaviors lined up, and you model that and you create a center. And that's what we do at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. We follow something called the Right Way. And RIGHT is an acronym. It stands for respect, intelligence, gallantry or grace, humor, and true, to be true to yourself. And so these are 5 values that Mark went around the world and discovered were common in all cultures. And so that's what we teach the young men, and we teach that to the parents. And we say, you know, if you don't have a way, your sons are going to go find a way, and they're going to find a materialistic way in this culture, or a drug way with their buddies, or, you know, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that are out there, or worse, or combine that all and go down. And so what we provide them is this way. And so we provide that for parents as well. So yes, of course, if both parents can do it, great. But if this one's a knucklehead, I don't care if it's a father or a mother, or your 2 fathers and 2 mothers, or whatever, I don't care. You just put a stake in the ground and start organizing, and stop trying to talk to the dysfunctional person, because you're wasting your time and breath. You focus on your son or your daughter and your family, and you lock it down, and we can show you how to do that. True.
Yeah. Any of you guys want to comment about that, as far as how your experience at YMUW, where all the men are lock, step, and barrel, and then, you know, young men go back to their homes where the parents aren't. We're not saying that with any judgment. We've all made these mistakes, so there's no judgment here. We're just saying that's what they perceive. How would you translate that forward, Brent, into your own lives, and you know, what might you say about that?
You okay, Brent? I'll take that here first.
Yeah.
So when our son did his first Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, I would have to say that my wife and I were definitely not aligned in how to parent our kids. And I was probably more the dysfunctional parent than she was. And just briefly, the situation was that I just didn't follow through on discipline, and really what I think should have been modeling good role model for our children. So one thing that the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend did for us, in addition to the benefits that our son received, was it really taught us how to be good parents, and how to get together. And, you know, we didn't always agree, but we learned to, you know, if we don't agree, we don't argue in front of the kids. We take it offline and we figure it out, and then we come back with a united front. So that's super important. The other thing I would say for parents, and again, this is through my own experience, sadly, there are a lot of parents who will enroll their son or daughter in a program like this with the attitude of, okay, you know, here's my son, here's some money, go fix them and send them back when they're fixed. And as Brent said earlier, the young men and the young women do not need to be fixed. It's the parents that need to be fixed. And so to the extent that the parents are willing to roll up their sleeves, get into the trenches, look at their own shit, is so helpful through this whole process.
Yeah.
And, you know, as maybe we'll get into a little bit later, in addition to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, Doc started an organization called Challenging Teenage Sons. And it's basically a workshop for parents whose sons go to the weekend. As a matter of fact, the workshop happens at the same time as the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. And I've been honored and privileged to be able to assist Mark in 2 or 3 of those workshops. And for me, my passion is helping people achieve their highest potential. And that's really an outlet for that. So that is my big takeaway from that question.
Okay, cool. And yes, we will talk about the parenting workshop, which is really, for you viewers, you should know that it's really not a workshop traditional. we have developed it into, it's really a rite of passage for parents. And that's a really new concept. It's a really new concept. And we are promoting that because it works. And the weekend, just like the young men go through amazing changes, the parents do too, because Bo and I, and certainly Brent is a parent, we've all made this mistake. So we say this with no judgment, but our job in that rite of passage for parents is to learn how to have the parents learn how to let go of their sons as boys, treat them as young adults, how to communicate with them, how to grieve their loss that they're going to lose their boy, how to prepare for the empty nest. There's so much that goes on there, but when both weekends are over, the families reunite in a way where they really can see each other more respectfully, because they've learned that they have to let go of their old ways of relating. And we will come back to that in a little bit. For you, Brent, as far as, the advice for parents when they're divided, you've been through divorce, I've been through divorce, we know what that's like. Anything you want to say about that and how parents might learn how something
so
new?
This is to the dads, right? As fully and as genuinely as possible, I encourage you, as fully as genuinely as possible, to remember the woman that you fell in love with, the woman that you decided to have children with, and keep that front and center in your relationship, because she is always going to be your kid's mom. All right. And if you're watching this video, it's likely that you've bought into your kid. You've not left. And no judgment to the fathers who leave. I get that. My father had to get out. I love my dad. He's dead now, and I have nothing but warmth for him. I'm sure there's a little anger in there somewhere too, but I mean, genuinely, if you're watching this, you've likely bought in. So the easiest way that I've found to maintain myself, and I just moved from California to Wisconsin because my ex-wife's family lives here, and she wanted to move back. And I'm a California born and bred kid, so it's not like I'm returning to my roots. But point being, it's like, to do this, I had to keep her front and center, and remember that this is my son's mom. And if you've bought in to supporting and being a part of your kid's life, the best way, I just believe, based on what I've read and what I've seen, is to be supportive of the unit. It's bigger than me. This family is bigger than me. It doesn't revolve around me. It doesn't revolve around my ex-wife, and it actually doesn't revolve around my kid. It's still this third organism or fourth organism that needs our support. So my my encouragement is that, I'm sure you're going to go through this period where it's, she's wrong and I hate her and whatever, that's natural. But, this is your kid's mom. You got to honor the relationship, I believe, because it's enduring. You're going to be connected to this person forever. So when I was in high school, my parents had gone through divorce 1.0 when, my dad was a fucking asshole and my mom was a bitch, and they were just, but they weren't talking to each other. My dad would drop me off. I was 12 years old. He would drop me off in front of the house, and he would pick me up in front of the house, and he never stepped foot inside the house that I was living in with my mom. It was just contentious. So by the time I'm graduating high school, I'm there. They're both up in the stadium watching me graduate, and neither one of them came down. This is like, they've been divorced for like 4 years, and neither one of them came down after I graduated onto the football field where this after graduation ceremony is going on, because they didn't want to see the other one. I mean, it was just that bad, and that's just not the way to go. So, I mean, just the way you're describing it and bringing it all up, I want the viewers to know that that's the effect that we have on our kids. I've been divorced many years, as Bo knows. Now in our parenting rite of passage workshop, I'm also teaching with my former wife, Suzanne. She's a gifted family therapist. When we decided to put our differences apart, because when we did fall in love, we always supported each other in our personal growth, spiritual development. So 2 things happened for us to turn it around. Number one, we had to have a bigger purpose than just our contentious relationship. And the purpose was to ultimately have the happiest divorced married family, is what we call it. So when we made the kids the top priority and not our arguing, everything shifted. And then when we remembered that we fell in love because we wanted to support each other to be enlightened in this lifetime, whatever that means to all of you, we brought our friendship back. And the best thing that ever happened was our children got out of all their negative habits with drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. They literally dropped all that stuff because
they couldn't divide us anymore. We were united. They wanted to naturally, innately be part of that unit. So for you, Brent, I really give you a lot of credit, just getting uprooted just a few months ago, just so that you can keep your family intact. That's a very gallant thing. So I appreciate you doing that. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. One of the things that I'd like to do, we have about maybe 5 or 10 minutes left, is I would really love for you to take a moment to think about this question, which is, now that you've all worked with young men so much, or you've had sons, of your own, I'm sure if you think back to some of the principles that we use at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, you can come up with at least one thing. You don't have to list 25 things, because I know you know so much about this, but what one thing would you say to parents that through your own experience with your son, or mentoring sons or young men, or by being at so many YMUWs, what advice could you give parents on how to treat their young men, or how to deal with him, or how to view him, that might give them some new ways of seeing? Because we're so wildly successful. Parents called me for sure after a week and go, "What the hell did you do? My son came home. It's been a week. He hasn't screamed. He hasn't yelled. He's making his bed. What happened?" So we've learned a lot about how to be with young men. So any wisdom you want to share about that, at least highlight one thing, and then we'll come back for another round or two if we have time. So anybody wants to jump in, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go. Young men, I would say, are the most sensitive of the sensitive sex. And I think the most important thing is to really be cognizant of that, and that they're highly intelligent as well. And that they are mostly intelligent and sensitive around how you behave as a parent towards them. And so if you're repeating yourself to them, if you're not holding clear standards that make them, so what I say to parents is, be the wall, but be a padded wall, be a soft wall, a wall that doesn't move. It doesn't fall on them, it doesn't nag them, it doesn't come after them, but it's a wall. And that wall is padded with love, boundary. So, I think the most functional young men and young women are raised with high love and high boundaries. And what I see a lot is high love and low boundaries. And then, of course, what's terrible is high boundaries and low love. And then off is not too much of either one. But we get a lot of the high love and the low boundaries, or the inconsistencies. And so you have to really stop and think about, what are your virtues, values, beliefs, and behaviors, have them line up, and say it to them once, listen to the response, and then repeat yourself, and then shut up. And figure out what's going to happen after that. It's going to go, and don't repeat yourself, because young men love to play this game of getting you angry and red in the face, and poking at you, and lawyering you, and badgering you, and all these things. And then they win, because then they get out of whatever it is, or they feel powerful because they love to compete. They're all about competition. And so they'll either stonewall you, or they'll get you upset. And if you lose your emotional stability, you're done.
Great advice. Great advice. We definitely teach the young men at the Ultimate Weekend a simple mindfulness-based stress reduction technique. All the men are trained at it. As these guys know me very well, I'm an expert in stress management, because I'm the most frantic, stressed out person you've ever met. And so it's taken me a bunch of decades to get as calm as I can. And the reason why I'm saying that is because just by having one simple technique has really helped me so much. And I got forged as an expert in stress management by being a ringmaster so many times. I've had young men come right in my face, literally snot running out of their nose. They want to kill me. They want to bend me in two. They want to kill me. They say the most outrageous things. And I'm just standing there doing my breathing, keeping my mind right. And so I'm making this point because it supports what Richard said, which is this. If you can't stay calm in front of your children, no matter how outrageous they're behaving, unless they're physically harming you, if you can stay really calm, that's when the relationship can change to be more caring and more cooperative when they see that you are not responding in any negative way to their instinctual or emotional immature shit. So stay calm. It's a good tool. It's helped all of us on this call, that's for sure. How about for you, Bo? Any one major thing you'd say that parents could learn from what you know about dealing with your son and being an expert at YMUW with young men?
Thanks, Doc. So somebody, maybe Brent, mentioned that we treat the young men 5 years older than they are. So the idea is to treat them as adults. And what that means is, I like to say that there's a freedom responsibility equation. So we teach them that, you know, you want to go do this and that and the other thing, that's your freedom. And in order to be able to do that, you have to take some responsibility. So one thing that we did with our son is we came up with an agreement at Richard's suggestion, which was brilliant. There were 3 columns. The first column is expected behaviors. Second column was privileges if you follow those behaviors. And the third column is consequences if you don't. And the one big thing that we found, well, a couple things. First of all, young men and young women will never tell you that they want boundaries, but they do. And so this set the boundaries. So it sort of enabled him to relax around that. And let's just say, for example, one of the expected behaviors is you're home by 11 o'clock on Friday night. And invariably, you know, he'd come home at 11:30 or 12. And let's say the consequence was, okay, you don't go out next Friday night. So as soon as I said, okay, here's the consequence, you know, he'd start to hem and haw and negotiate. So I'd go get the agreement and I'd say, is this your signature right here on this agreement? Well, yeah, you know. So, okay. So totally takes the emotion out of it, gets away from what Doc was saying about, you know, if they can get you red in the face and, you know, all upside down, you know, they've won. So it goes a long way to avoiding that. And it gives them a set of boundaries that they need to follow. And it worked really, really well. It was a major point in his development. And it was also an example of how, you know, parents need to get involved in this whole process. It's not, here's my kid, fix him, send him back. That will, I guarantee you, that will not work. Parents have to get involved.
Yeah. And just to support you, Bo, when you said, you know, talking a little bit more about the Parenting Rite of Passage workshop, the key thing that we teach that works for the young men when they show up at YMUW is that all the mentors are trained in one way, one method. That's it, one way. All the parents are trained in the same way. So that's what we've learned, because we have a tribal model that tribes used to operate on a shared set of virtues and values. And if the behaviors of everybody in that tribe demonstrated those virtues and values, they were held in a high regard, right? And that's how they develop self-respect, because they develop positive beliefs because they learn to respect themselves and others. So that's what I'm kind of hearing you both say when you say, talk about the parenting workshop. That to me would be the key, is that they learn how to decide what virtues and values they want their sons to learn. They learn how to consequence, but it's positive discipline. There's no anger. There's no punishments in our model. It's about how to get, right? And it's all for one purpose, to teach those young men how to make it in that outside world. I'm pointing to the window behind me. Like, that's our sole purpose as parents of young men and young women, is get them ready. So that's what we do with that Parenting Rite of Passage. You say goodbye to your sons as boys. You say hello to them as young men. You learn how to communicate with them, motivate them, inspire them, consequence them in the most positive way, celebrate their lives with them, help them discover who they are. And then you will have, like Bo has, and I have, and I know that Brent's going to have, my children are now 37 and 40. They are so loyal to me. I am so loyal to them. It's the most goosebumpy, tear-jerking, coziest bond I'll ever experience in this life. I know Bo has that, and I know that Brent has that with his son. So it's like, it's worth it. when you know how to do all these things, you have to have a way. It'll get you the results you want in your life. That is for sure. Brent, did you get a chance to reveal some wisdom about like a tip for parents?
So just in terms of a tip, I'd say something that I learned on our team, not just volunteering for YMUW, but the four men on this and in this video are also on a men's team together. And what I've learned is find them right? Find your young men right. So I work to find Ryan right in times when I'm thinking, oh, he's doing it wrong or he's messing up or something. Either he's actually in trouble or I'm thinking, this isn't how I want my kid to be raised. I don't want him to grow up this way. And well, you know what? He's grown up this way because when I was his age, I basically had a, football, a baseball, and a soccer ball. And that was pretty much, my toys. I didn't have any video games. I didn't have any consoles. I didn't have any computers. I didn't have any iPads, blah, blah. So I work to find Ryan right in what he's doing. And the right is, what is he expressing of his own true self? Like I seem highly competitive when I often would think in the past, like he's not into, team sports. Well, he's playing video games with a bunch of other buddies. He's doing team stuff. He's really competitive. He's really loyal. He's really thoughtful. He's really empathetic. And it's just observing him playing games. So I pull that in. I see him as right, and that lets me engage him in that way. So one, to see him as right, and two, I'd say that whether you officially subject your young man, I'll say, to a rite of passage, he's undergoing the passage. You can't get around it. He's growing up. He's transitioning, and it happens faster and sooner than anybody wants, most likely. Certainly for me, at 12 years old, I'm looking at my kid, 5 years older than 12 is 17, and he is a 17-year-old in many respects. And it's nuts. And I have not yet done Doc's Challenging Teenage Sons workshop for parents because I'm at the YMUW with the young men. But one day I will be, and I definitely respect especially I believe the mom's desire to grieve the loss of their babies. I've had the good fortune to work with enough young men, enough parents, and see this happen enough to realize that, no, this actually needs to happen. So I'm able to treat my young man at 12 in a way that really respects its accelerated maturation. It's nuts. So find them right and respect that this is happening regardless. It's just a biological thing. It just is.
Right. Very important. What I want our viewers to learn is that when Brent says finding your son right, it doesn't mean that you don't, it's a both and. Two things are true. You want to always find your son right first, and then if there's a need to consequence, that's fine too. The classic example I use at the parenting workshop is parents will say to me, oh, my son came home late, or, let's say I'm coaching parents here in my office, and oh, my son, he's a jerk. He came home so late. He was stoned. He was all screwed up. And so we told him to go to his room and we punished him and we took away everything. Well, in the find him right model first, I know if I'm coaching that young man, I would say, so bro, what's up? Your mom, the curfew's 11, you got home at 12, what up? And so the young man, in this one instance I'm thinking of specifically, said, well, I was waiting on the corner with my friend because his mom was supposed to come and pick him up, and she was late, and I didn't want to leave him. So I stood there on the corner until the mom came, and then I came home. So I found him right. I said, oh, I get it, bro. You were being loyal. I see. And his whole face lit up. Whether he was lying or not, I'll never know. But I found him right. And then I said, and you were also irresponsible. You were not doing something that you either like to do or didn't like to do until completion. You did not make the phone call. So now I'm asking you to get accountable. Like, can you own that you would have, could have, should have called? So I asked him that, and he said yes. I said, great, thank you for cleaning it up. You got accountable. And then I'll encourage your parents to have a challenging consequence for you so that you remember this and don't do it in the future, because when you do it out there in the world, it's not going to be so forgiving. So that's how we do that. We find them right, and then whatever else that needs to happen too. So it's not just lovey-dovey, padded wall. We love you. It's fine. You can be irresponsible. It's both and. So I appreciate you bringing that point.
Yeah, respect, Doc, if I may. It
Sure.
also resets my expectations, right? It's like I expect to see this virtue, which I prize, like, teamwork, engagement with others, empathy. It's like I expect to see it in a certain way because that's how I grew up. So I had my kid at 44, right? So a lot's changed in 44 years. Kids aren't behaving the same way. They don't have the same opportunities. They don't go out as much. They're not free range kids. It's not like, I'll see at nighttime come in from playing. No, it's helicopter parenting. It's gated communities. It's a different world. So my expectations and my experience of how young men grow up is totally irrelevant, almost totally irrelevant in a functional, actually how it works, the particulars of it. But the underlying desire to be a good young man remains, and it's expressed differently. So when I'm thinking of finding him right, it's like, how is he expressing the virtues that I value and that I believe that I demonstrate just in day out life? How is he expressing them? It's like, by God, he is. He's just doing it his way. It's a powerful thing, and it's actually reaffirming and reassuring in a way. But it's an exercise.
Yeah. So I'll kind of conclude this with the fact that most of human communication is nonverbal. And we've said a couple of times, your young men are sniffing you. They are super sensitive, and they are reacting to how you are acting. So if you start out with them feeling right, then their force fields are going to come down. But if you start out with making them wrong, up go the force fields and up come the fingers and all the behavior. And this whole thing will just keep going because it's the Catholics versus the Protestants, or the Palestinians versus the Jews. They just keep going until one side, and you are as the parent, hopefully you're going to decide to be the more mature person and to model how to behave when someone is misbehaving. Mm-hmm. So this is a big challenge, and it's a big challenge for our culture. We are seeing, adults act like children if they don't agree with someone else's politics or with their viewpoint on reality. And our country will split if we don't figure out how to be mature and deal with reality as it's happening without losing our cool.
Right.
Number one, your young men are sniffing you, they're sensitive, and you better make them right and then provide the consequence. And the consequence is not a punishment. You got to get out of this punishment and rewards. It doesn't work. You give someone a reward, they'll just go for the reward. You punish them, they'll just not like you. Mm-hmm. This is a big thing. Young men have free will. And if they don't like you, they're going to go like this. They will not respect you. They might love you. You might love them, but you won't like them either. So you better figure out how to like them and how for them to feel it, and then come from that place.
Right. Absolutely. I want to wind down by saying that all four of us on this Zoom call have the same vision, which is this, that we honestly believe that when families are really healthy, when parents have a way to help their children discover who they are, their own authenticity, while also simultaneously learning how to be more responsible in their home and in their community and in the world, that's what's going to turn around the kind of problems that Richard is pointing at, that it's got to come from healthy families. And healthy families can only happen when there's healthy and happy and holy parents. So I just want to end the call by letting you parents know that it's on you to take good care of yourselves. You have to have the energy to raise your children. And when you have that energy and you give them the care they need, they'll be loyal to you for the whole rest of your life. And there's no better feeling as you get older knowing that your children love you and will take care of you. And that's the whole purpose of YMUW, is helping you raise your sons to be like those young men. And these three men, Brent, David, and Richard, I cannot tell you how many hundreds and maybe thousands of hours by now, I'm sure it's thousands of hours like me, that they've put in. They've all been paid the exact same amount that I have been paid, which is zero, right? But we like to call it the spiritual pay. And I have to say, being on a men's team with these guys, we see each other every other week, now on Zoom, of course, but this is my family. We are taking care of each other. And for you fathers or men watching the show, like, If you're not on a men's team or haven't been initiated as an adult men, which we all have on this call, go do it. The more you're around men, good men, the right men, we like to call them, then the better lover you'll be, the better father you'll be, the better worker you'll be, the better everything you'll be, the more you respect yourself. So fellas, thank you so much for all that you've put in to YMUW and the world, so that this vision of ours can come true, the world to be a better place when we have young men who really know how to take good care of things, which we know they want to do. So in closing, I'd like to say for all of you viewers, if you want to learn more about the work that the four of us are doing, please contact us. It's Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. The website is YMUW.org, and you can email us at info@ymuw.org.